Chapter 70. This venerable one returns. Chu Wanning wasn't some weakling that just anyone could threaten. There was a flash of golden light. Moran could have sworn he saw some kind of weapon in Shia Sini's hand, but it was gone in less than an instant. And then both of Xiao Man's hand had been sheared clean off, wrists and all. Xiao Man screamed and stumbled backward. He had only one usable limb remaining, now that even his hands were gone. The hands that had seized Chu Wanning dropped to the ground. Chu Wanning stood up, enraged, his expression dark as never before. His lips moved slightly, like he might say something. In the end, he seemed too angry for words and turned away, his face pale. Moran rushed over and pulled him close. "Shidi, are you okay? Are you hurt?" In Moran's arms, Chu Wanning only shook his head, too disgusted to speak. Despite everything, the Xiao Man in front of them was merely an illusion of someone who had once lived 200 years ago. Chu Wanning wiped the blood splatters off his face. "As you saw," he said quietly, "staying here won't be any safer for me than going out with you. I can take care of myself. I won't slow you down." Moran had heard about his little Shidi's skill from Chu Wanning, but he had never seen it for himself until now. It was, admittedly, quite eye-opening. "Sure, you're pretty impressive, but..." Chu Wanning pushed harder. "I'm also familiar with all kinds of weapons, so I can give you pointers from the side." "But..." Chu Wanning lifted his eyes. "Won't you trust me? Just this once?" Moran fell silent. "Shizun?" Chu Wanning had meant to emphasize the sincerity of his words, but with this young, tender voice, it came out all softly adorable instead, almost like he was acting cute. When Chu Wanning heard his own voice, he was flummoxed. Moran blinked, then started rapidly scratching his head in confusion and going, "Ah," before burying his face in both hands. A long moment passed with his face thus buried before he said, "See, I'm just worried that you, 2 whole lives, and this was the first time a kid had called out to him so sweetly. Moran felt genuinely, incredibly close to the boy at this moment, as if they were blood brothers. When Moran hated someone, he hated them to the bone, but to those he cherished, he was extremely tender. When he finished clawing at his head and finally looked back up at Chu Wanning from where he was crouched, the tips of his ears had turned red. If only he'd really had a little brother, maybe he wouldn't have been so lonely. Unfortunately for Moran, his reaction was noticed. Chu Wanning hesitated a little, then said experimentally in a small voice, "Shige?" Shige was an even more familiar form of address than Shishong. Moran braced his forehead against the hand. He was seriously at his limit, unable to even form words. Chu Wanning glanced knowingly at Moran and mentally filed away this weak point. He figured that since he was, at present, already in a child's body, and since Moran hadn't the slightest idea who he actually was, there was nothing to be embarrassed about. He opened his mouth again, and out came a soft, saccharine sweet. "G? G. Moran G. Ah, okay, I'll take you. So stop saying that." Moran jumped to his feet, face bright red, and rubbed the goosebumps on his arms. "All right, fine, come along then. You win, okay? You win, oh my god." Hands clasped behind his back, Chu Wanning tilted his head and smiled a tiny smile. "Let's go then." As he walked leisurely toward the door, he heard Moran mumbling quietly behind him. "Where in the heavens did you learn that from? I nearly died from the sugar overload. Holy crap." Chu Wanning had originally been in a dreadful state of mind after what happened with Chu Chun, but now he felt the gloom in his chest slowly lifting. Then he heard Moran ask, "Oh yeah, what was Shidi going to say earlier?" Chu Wanning turned around and replied evenly, "Ah, that." "I forgot." Moran eyed him. "If I remember it later, I'll tell Moran Gege then." "Ha, stop! Don't say that one. Shishong is fine. Shishong is enough." Moran waved his hands frantically. Chu Wanning's eyes were like a pair of deep puddles, and the corners of his lips quirked with a hint of a smile. If you say so, Shizun. Anyway, I think the Ghost King will show up soon. This illusion is based on the memories of survivors, and those survivors have left Lin An by now, so it probably won't last much longer. That makes sense. We should be able to get out once we defeat him, right? I'm gonna find whoever it was that manifested the illusion and tried to kill us. Chu Wanning nodded. Fortunately for us, judging by his battle with Chu Chun earlier, this Ghost King isn't too strong. In fact, he might be the weakest of the 9 kings. Although the illusion has been manifested, it seems to me that whoever did it probably thought I was an ordinary 6-year-old and didn't expect me to be able to help take care of this. Moran nodded along. Sounds about right. Chu Wanning continued. So, rather than saying that he tried to kill us, it would be more accurate to say that I was never part of the equation. In truth, he's only after you, Shizun. Moran nodded even more vigorously. Checks out. After we get out of here, Shizun must make sure to tell Chu Meng about this. Something is afoot in Peach Blossom Springs, and we have to be careful from here on out. Though, let's not dwell on that for the time being. Shizun, please lead the way. I won't slow you down. Chu Wanning's prediction was spot on. By 3 in the morning, the massacre in the city was winding down. A bloody rift cracked open the sky, and green smoke poured over the wreckage to solidify into the shape of a hunched-over man. The man's eyes were bright scarlet, and his skin was ashen pale. Half of his body had flesh and skin, but the other half was stark, exposed bone. He stalked through the corpse-littered city with a black banner in tow, absorbing the pain and resentment of the newly deceased as he passed. Moran studied the man's face from where they were hidden. So that's him? There was a hint of relief in his voice. It was obvious to Chu Wanning why he sounded so relieved, but he had no intention of revealing himself yet, and a 6-year-old wouldn't know this sort of thing. So he looked up at Moran with faint cluelessness. What do you mean? You guessed right. The 9 kings of the Ghost Realm differ in strength, and this one is indeed the weakest among them. Moran said in a quiet voice as he watched the figure approach from behind a window. We lucked out. What does Shizun think of our odds? 90%. Always best not to be too confident, you know. Chu Wanning smiled a little. He of course knew that the Skeleton King was the weakest of the 9 Ghost Kings, but strength was relative. Even though Moran wielded the holy weapon Jiangui at his age, and with his experience, facing the Skeleton King alone would still push him a bit. Unfortunately for the person plotting against Moran, the kid by his side wasn't just some rookie from Xisheng Peak, but Chu Wanning himself. Help me. They were about to spring out the door with a surprise attack when a weak voice called out from behind them. He's still alive? Moran's eyes were wide as he turned to look at Xiao Man, curled up in the bag. I don't want to die, Dad. I don't want to. Chu Wanning looked at the young man huddled in a rumpled heap of rags and shook his head. In truth, this person likely died as soon as he stepped in here. He's only still alive in this illusion, because we happened to be here and killed the undead that were after him. Some things have turned out differently. Moran sighed. If he hadn't defected, do you think that maybe Chu Chun wouldn't have died 200 years ago? That maybe Lin An wouldn't be a pile of ruins now? Maybe. However, they both knew that no matter what they did now, the past was the past. The important thing now was to defeat the Skeleton King and escape this illusion. There was no reason to delay, so they charged out of their hiding place, killing everything in their path. Escaping this illusion proved to possibly be even easier than they thought. Moran knew exactly what he had to do and immediately engaged the Skeleton King. However, as Chu Wanning watched them face off, he felt a wave of uneasiness. It wasn't because Moran was struggling. To the contrary, under his guidance, Moran maintained a solid upper hand. Even so, more and more Chu Wanning got the feeling that the person behind all this had planned it all far too precisely. That was to say, that person had carefully assessed that it would be extremely difficult for Moran and one other person of average skill to escape this situation alone. Yet, he also hadn't deployed anything more deadly so as not to arouse suspicions of foul play. His goal had been to make it look like Moran had died in a training accident. Who exactly was this person who plotted so meticulously against Moran's life? Was it really that fake Gojin from Jinchen Lake? Chu Wanning observed the ferocious battle between Moran and the Ghost King. The longer it went on, the more Moran came out on top, and as the sky slowly lightened, the Ghost King's strength gradually waned. Victory was all but at hand. Just then, in the horde of undead and demons sealed behind Moran's spell, Chu Wanning saw the face of a living person.
"Who's there?"
Standing amidst the walking corpses, this person's face was half shadowed beneath the hood of his cloak. From this distance, all Chu Wanning could see was a sharp chin, sweetly colored lips, and a gentle curved nose. A single look, and Chu Wanning could tell that the man didn't belong in the illusion of 200 years past. He hadn't assumed any kind of fighting stance, and just stood there, shrouded under his hood, looking in the direction of Chu Wanning and Moran. When he saw that Chu Wanning had noticed him, he smiled faintly, then lifted a hand and swept it across his neck in a kill gesture. Chu Wanning cursed under his breath and lunged in an attempt to capture him. However, the figure only smiled with the crimson lips and ivory teeth under his hood and mouthed what looked like goodbye. Then he turned and disappeared.
"Stay right there!"
It was useless. The sky brightened. Layers of fish-scale clouds painted across it. The fight between Moran and the Ghost King ended with a final blow. The moment that Jiang Gui sheared the Ghost King's head clean off, sending foul blood flying everywhere, their bodies abruptly flew up. That sunrise of old Linan from 200 years ago and the ruined wreckage of that city, all of it sped away in a blur. Thump. When Chu Wanning hit the ground again, he found himself back in the trial cave. Moran was also there, dropped on the ground next to him and covered in blood from the fight, though mostly not his own. He was laid out on the ground, evidently still too tired to get up, only gazing at Chu Wanning with those pitch-black eyes. A few moments passed, then he lifted a hand and gently poked at Chu Wanning's forehead. "We made it." Chu Wanning made a soft sound of assent, but his expression was dark.
"I saw someone in there just now."
"What?"
"It was probably the one who manifested the illusion."
Moran rolled up in a sitting position, his eyes going wide. "You saw him? You saw him? Did you see who it was? What did he look like?" Chu Wanning shook his head, brows furrowed.
"He was wearing a hood, so I couldn't see clearly. Based on the figure, he's probably male, fairly young and thin, with a pointed chin."
He didn't voice the rest of his thoughts. He felt like that half of the face had looked vaguely familiar, as if he had seen that person somewhere before, long ago. He also couldn't shake the feeling that he might be mistaken. It had only been half a face after all, and there were plenty of similar-looking people out there. He couldn't really be sure. He was deep in thought when he felt Moran pat him on the shoulder. "Shili."
"What is it?"
"Look over there." Moran's voice was low, and a chill ran through it. Chu Wanning looked in the direction he was pointing. It was 18. At the entrance of the trial cave, 18 hung from the ceiling, both eyes bulging outward, the embroidered satin shoes on her feet swaying in mid-air. She was dead, and there was no wind. Judging by the angle of her body's sway, the murderer had just left. However, the thing that turned their faces pale was the murder weapon cinched around her neck. It was a willow vine with sharp, blade-like leaves. The vine coursed with a fiery red light that crackled, erupting with sparks that fell together with the drops of blood. Jiangui. The thing that had strangled 18 and that now hung her from the ceiling of the cave was none other than the holy weapon Jiangui.